Welcome to Drugstore Culture's 6th Vodcast, and this is myself and Peter Hoskin, Deputy Editor, talking about the Theresa May speech. And we just put up a 5-word tweet which summarised your views, Pete. Would you like to repeat that tweet?
I was responding to my own longer tweet, linking to the post I've written about it, but those 5 words were, "Oh, how I hated it."
So that's kind of the top end of the inverse pyramid. So shall we go through it a bit and discuss why you reached that conclusion, maybe areas that are interesting, aside from the extent to which we hated it? I suppose the headline probably will be, apart from the fact that she danced in appallingly to Dancing Queen, that she didn't have a total calamity like last year with the coughing, and also that she very clearly drew a line under austerity. Now the question that made me kind of ask immediately was, that's a political declaration, but is it actually a deliverable fiscal principle?
Yeah, I think that's the key question, because basically she said that in her spending review next year, which will probably come, I think there's usually time with budgets, so we're looking at October, November 2019, she said that she will deliver a spending review that keeps the debt going down, but increases support for public services, so actually
especially health, spending. No doubt.
That's fine, but it's also after Brexit.
Yes,
and that's the key thing. So she's making
and also, as you pointed out, I think during the speech while we're watching it, there's a recession. So we've got possibly the double impact of a recession and whatever impact Brexit has. We don't know what the complexion of that deal is going to be, in spite of her optimism today. So really, it's a question of, she says austerity is over. It's obviously key to their strategy for the next election to do so, but I don't see how austerity on the ground is going to end for quite a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's the problem with lots of speeches, all political speeches to some extent, but it's really clarified in moments like this, and it's that it's just words. It's just words. There's absolutely.
You described it in the post as a sort of Wikipedia. What was the phrase you used?
Oh, I described it as a Wikipedia speech.
Yeah.
I thought I was making a separate point with that, which was that so much of it was just like filler, and it was just descriptive.
It was too long, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
way too long.
It went on for like an hour and a half or something. I think after 45 minutes it had reached its peak and made all its points. But then we got into the real Wikipedia stuff, which was just the description. At one point she said that the NHS is free at the point of use. Which is, it's like, thanks for that, Theresa.
Never guessed that.
Yeah, and she also, the whole sections on the Tories and free markets. It was straight from Wikipedia.
There was also a point about there was a lengthy passage about the virtues of unity. Which, as you pointed out in your post, was followed by a slightly.
Oh, that was one of my favourite bits, but for the wrong reasons.
Go on.
She said, I forget the exact words, but she said, that the Conservatives are a party that will always believe in unity and
coming together
to solve the problems of our country.
Whereas,
and then the next line, literally the next sentence was, Labour Party used to believe in that too. In other words, we're for unity,
whereas those polarising people over there
aren't. Which I just don't know how that even got into the first draft of a speech, let alone the 100th. And I think that was one of the other problems. I mean, a lot of the content of the speech was sort of bad or iffy, but I felt structurally it was weird. And it had these inner contradictions. At the beginning, it went from this jokey entrance that was probably too jokey. We had the dancing, we had the reference to her
self-deprecating stuff, all that,
and then it just immediately went to the First World War. And suddenly sombre voice. And that was strange. The whole, like I say, the structure of it, where it peaked 45 minutes in, and then we got the awful turgid descriptions of conservatism and free markets. It was weirdly structured, and then, as I also say in my post, it ended on the line with "Together, let's build a better Britain." And I just think that's copied and pasted. That's another Wikipedia moment. It's how many politicians have said "Together, let's build a better Britain," or whatever the words she used were. It's just It's so platitudinous.
It is a series of platitudes. I agree. I think there was some political content to it in this sense that she was obviously saying my way or the highway on Brexit.
Yeah.
There was a very clear differentiation both with People's Vote and with Corbyn and Boris Johnson. And there was an interesting line, I thought, which was, you could hear the sort of intake of breath in the hall, that they might, if they don't go with her on Chequers, the word she didn't use, the Chequers plan, they might not end up with a Brexit at all. And that seemed to me there was quite a lot packed into that, because what she was really, I think, threatening was, if you don't go with me, you could end up with a second referendum by default or a general election you don't want.
Yeah, I mean, I actually thought that was the cleverest part of the speech, one of the only clever parts of the speech. It wasn't just with Brexit, it was also with Boris, where a lot of it was implicit. So she didn't mention Boris by name, not that she ever would have, but there wasn't even really the gasp out loud moment where you thought, ooh. There were moments where you thought, oh, that's a riposte to Boris, but it's quite subtle,
yes,
I thought. And even the Brexit thing, even though that was a gasp out loud moment, and like you say, the hall almost did, I thought that argument was weaved in actually quite skillfully, and quite subtly, and was more powerful for it. She wasn't there to say, she wasn't there to argue necessarily. She was there, I thought she was making a case quite almost chattily.
Yes.
Almost. She was talking to that audience. And I think she was more convincing, persuasive because of it.
One of the big tensions I found was that there were some, token noises made about diversity and how everyone should be judged according to the content of their heart, not the colour of their skin, that kind of stuff. Pretty much a hark back to her well-known Burning Injustices remarks before she became Prime Minister. And also then a very a bit of a slightly laboured passage about there's a great world out there, I'm a great globaliser. And I felt that was very much at odds with the passages on immigration and the sheer relish that seemed to underpin that, and you could hear the drawbridge being clanked upwards even as she was claiming that Britain is still very open.
It was weird. I think she almost fisked her own speech. So there were these passages where she said, one of the lines I think you're referring to, she said something almost exactly like, our greatest quality is our talent and our diversity. Yes. And then a few lines later she's saying like, but is it really?
But is it really?
Do I really believe in talent and diversity? Here's an immigration policy that will affect both of them.
Yes.
Which was strange. And I actually think there were a lot of those sort of weird dissonant couplets, I guess.
Well, I think one of the things she was trying to do and didn't quite succeed was to row back from some of the hard populism of 2016, the Citizen of Nowhere lines and all that. And there was a lot of it was very interesting, her appeal to sort of what one might call now traditional moderate Labour voters, which reminded me very much of the way that Blair in the mid-90s appealed to One Nation Tories, claiming that the Tories had lurched to the right. She identified the Jeremy Corbyn party, and you could see the basis of the next election campaign in that the Tories are going to try and appeal to moderate Labour voters and say, you are not represented by Corbyn, we're the moderate party. But it's quite hard again, I think, to reconcile that claim to moderacy with the sort of populist reality of modern conservatism.
Again, that's the problem. It's just words. Theresa May is saying we're moderate. She described the Conservative Party or the government as a moderate, patriotic government.
Yeah.
She used the word moderate. And all through the speech it was sprinkled with anti-moderate sentiments, and that's what her government has been, We've seen Windrush, we've seen Brexit, and whether you agree with Brexit or not, I think it's fair to say that she has never made an effort to reach out to the 48% of people that apparently she agreed with. There's never been a sense of, this is one of my peeves, but there are very few politicians, least of all Theresa May, who I'd call what I'd call considerate Brexiteers, who say, we know it's going to be difficult, we know some of you don't want this, but we're here to help, and here are our policies that we'll implement on the day after Brexit to make it easier. there's barely a plan for Brexit, let alone a plan for after Brexit. And
I mean, you can see that there's part of her that wants to be the sort of Abraham Lincoln of conservatism, and we are not enemies but friends. But actually, I don't think she has it in her, because I'm not sure she was ever a very committed Remainer. I think she was a very committed aspiring Prime Minister, and stayed just on the Remain side of the referendum. And then when the referendum went the way it went, became a passionate Brexiteer. And her whole sort of identity as a politician is now wrapped up in the delivery of the referendum. So she's completely and utterly, as you imply, sealed off to any other possibility. And I think that for her, the second referendum is a kind of a mortal threat, because it represents this insult to what has made her Prime Minister and the manifest destiny she has. The problem I felt in the speech was that although politically, in terms of internal politics, she probably bought herself a bit more time. I'm nervous of saying anything more than that, because there's a history of politicians, Tory leaders in fact, Duncan Smith and Thatcher being two, having apparently saved themselves at conference and then being dispatched very soon afterwards. So let's see. But she's certainly bought herself a bit of time. But I'm not sure that there was anything more in terms of what she really thinks Brexit is going to be like. And she does seem to me, I mean, tell me if you disagree, but she does seem to think that Chequers is in some form deliverable.
Yeah.
Which I can't reconcile with what the EU is saying.
Exactly. I think that's the great madness. We had Geoffrey Cox as well introducing her with this, kind of wonderful in its own way,
kind of RSC,
spirited RSC performance in defence of Chequers. But it just sort of highlighted the weirdness of all this, that a lot of people are talking among themselves and to conference halls,
very introspective
members, and it's so introspective, and we care what Boris thinks about this, and Jacob Rees-Mogg thinks about it, and Chequers, anti-Chequers, chuck Chequers, and as far as we know, Brussels has already chucked Chequers.
Yes,
there is no Chequers, and all we should be talking about is what is the actual plan. And we have a matter of months until the official leave date.
Yes,
that will have to be extended. We have less time until we're meant to finalise the plan.
October the 16th, 17th, I think, is the summit.
Well,
which is obviously going to slip.
Yeah.
You mentioned Boris. Where do you think this speech leaves him? Has it changed his position?
I'm not sure. I think it's probably strengthened May's position. It hasn't strengthened her in society at large, I don't think. I think one of the key questions with this speech was, did anything in it, apart from May using the word moderate, would anything in it have made moderate voters more inclined to vote for Theresa May and the Conservatives? I don't think so. No. Did it pacify Conservatives in the hall or watching on television? Probably a bit, because I always feel, this is what party conferences do. Yes. I think at party conferences, and we've been to plenty, almost any speech you see, even the most boring one, you can just feel the crowd warm to the politician giving it.
That's the narrative arc, isn't it? Yeah. Of every conference is that the leader is in some way embattled.
Yeah.
And then at the end, almost with a sort of predictable, tragic, dramatic format, the opposite of tragedy really, delivers a speech that saves him or her from the fate that apparently was going to befall them. Yeah. And I guess in that sense it was a traditional party speech. It
was. Your question was whether it's changed anything for Boris, and like I said, I think it has slightly strengthened May's position in her own party, but I also think the dividing lines are exactly the same. If anything, they're clearer between her and Boris. She said, "I am Chequers." Didn't use the word, but that was the point of the speech. Yeah. Boris is chuck Chequers. And also I feel that Boris is sort of operating. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes.
Yes.
And that doesn't stop. We saw a letter of no confidence.
James Doddridge,
earlier this morning. We saw the VIP list to Boris's speech, which was packed full of MPs. A lot of this is happening in oak panel tea rooms in Parliament, and one speech will not change that.
No.
If I said, if you're a moderate voter, would you have watched his speech and suddenly liked Theresa May? No. If you are a plotting Tory MP, would you have seen this speech and suddenly decide to stop plotting? No.
I would have thought not, and I think that the other thing that makes that all the more so is that what's about to happen geopolitically in the next few months is like nothing before. I mean, we are now in the final stages of the biggest constitutional negotiations this country's faced since the Second World War. No one knows what the outcome is, and the variables, both in terms of parliamentary arithmetic and the different factions, are ungovernable. So it really would be a fool that predicted where we'll be by Christmas, let alone by next March. Will she be leader this time next year? I somehow doubt it, but it's a very hard call.
I guess I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably a good note to end on, in a way, that we know nothing and she knows nothing.
I feel that very much about this conference season, that this has been sort of the final choreographed moment before we descend into a completely unpredictable bedlam. It'll be fun.
Looking forward to it.
Looking forward to it. Thanks very much, Peter.